Okay, now take a little bit of look on the next one. You have equations. Some number x, if I add 7 to it, it equals negative 11. So I need to find what my x is equal to. That's all these problems. Okay, the operation is addition. Okay, that's good. So the opposite of addition is subtraction. I'm adding a positive 7. So if I'm adding a positive number to that x, I need to subtract 7 because that will cancel out. It's inverse operations because 7 minus 7 is 0. Now, if I'm trying to balance something, if I take 7 units off one side, I need to subtract it from the other to maintain its balance. And then negative 11 minus 7 would be negative 18. Okay? You don't need the number line. You can use your calculator if you don't. Okay, now the next problem. 8 equals x minus 2. So what's the operator between the x and the 2? It's subtraction. Now, I don't like subtraction, so I'm going to make that plus negative. So this time I have a negative 2 that's being added to my x. So the opposite of adding a negative 2 is to add 2. Okay? If that number's negative, if you're ever adding a negative to your x, you're going to add positive 2. Opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. And then I add to the other side. And 8 plus 2 is 10. So we have 10. Okay, again, it might not seem like you need to today, but if you have the subtraction operator, you want to make it plus negative, and then we'll add the positive to that. Okay, x minus 2 equals negative 6. Okay, so again, the operator is subtraction, but I'm going to make that plus negative. And so if I have a negative 2, the opposite of negative 2 is positive 2, so I want to add positive 2 to it. So negative 2 plus 2 is 0. And then add it to the other side, and we have x equals negative 6 plus 2, which is negative 4. Okay, next problem. We're solving for the m variable. Now, m and 12. The relationship is adding. Okay, we're adding. Okay, it's already addition operation. So if we have adding, you just subtract 12. Opposite of positive 12 is negative 12, which would be minus 12. And I subtract 12. So negative 18 subtract 12 would be negative 30 equals m. So that's your answer, negative 30. Again, my next problem, I'm solving for the f variable. Now, the f and the 10, okay, f has a 10 being added to it, okay? So I'm good with adding, so the opposite of adding, I just subtract 10. Okay, so I take negative 10 minus 10, and that's negative 20. Okay, next problem. X equals. We have the adding operation of 5. So if I see plus 5, I'm going to just subtract 5 from that. Because 5 subtract 5 is 0. And subtract it from the other side. So negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. And that's x. Okay, next problem, solving for the x. We have the subtraction operator. Again, I would make that plus negative to start off with. And I have a negative 14 being added to that, okay? So the opposite of negative 14, if I have a negative number that's being added to my x variable, I need to plus 14, okay? You're either going to plus the number or minus the number. If it's positive, you minus it. If it's negative, you plus it, okay? So negative 14 plus 14 cancels out, and then add it to the other side. So 8 plus 14 is 22. Okay. Negative 2 equals negative 3 plus x. So I have the adding operation. Okay. So this negative 3, that's a negative you're adding. So I either add 3 or subtract 3. Okay. It's simple as that. Just put a 3 under it. That's negative, so you're going to plus 3. So negative 3 plus 3 cancels, and I plus 3 on the other side, okay? Negative 2 plus 3 is 1, so x equals 1. Okay, the next one, this is not an addition, okay? We don't have the adding operator between the 3 and the x, so that means it's multiplication, so I'm going to put a little dot there, okay? So, what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So when I have to divide in an equation, I like to underline this side, and whatever the number is multiplied by the x, 3, I put underneath there. And those common factors cancel out. Now, if I divided this side by 3, I need to divide the other side by 3. So negative 48 divided by 3 is negative 16. Okay, we're solving for x here. So here's my x. There's no operator between the x and the negative 7, so that means times. So the opposite of times is to divide. So I underline this side, and the number that's multiplied by the x, I've just put underneath their same sign because I want the same number with the same sign so I can cancel those. And then if I'm dividing this side by negative 7, I need to divide the other side by negative 7. So negative 98 divided by negative 7 is positive 14. Use your calculator on that. Okay, here's my x. No operator between the x and the negative 4, which stands for multiplication. Okay. So I underline this side, the number that's multiplied by the x, negative 4, that's what I put underneath so I can cancel the common factors. And then I need to divide the other side by negative 4. Okay, so I have the x. Negative 4.4 divided by negative 4 is 1.1. Okay, 2.8c equals 4.2. So again, you got c and 2.8, but they have no operation, so that is times. Okay, then you need to underline that side, and you're going to put 2.8 underneath because that's a number that's multiplied by the c. Okay, and then divide the other side by 2.8. Now the reason, again, if you have a number c, if you multiply and divide by that number, it's going to cancel out. Okay, so 4.2 divided by 2.8 is 1.5. Okay, next problem, solving for the x. So between the x and the negative 3, there's no operator, so it's times. And the opposite of times is to divide. So I underline that side, and I know if I take a number and times it by negative 3 and then divide it by that same number, they will cancel out. Then I go to the other side and divide by negative 3. So 108 divided by negative 3 is negative 36. Okay, next problem, 4x equals 27. Okay, so between, again, the 4 and the x have no operator, so it's a multiplication. And then I need to divide by 4, because if I take a number x, even though I don't know what x is, if I multiply by 4 and divide by 4, they will cancel out. And 27 divided by 4 is a decimal, and that's going to be 6.75. Okay, again, negative 5 and x. There's no operator between those two. So that's times. So I'm solving for x. And of course, the opposite of times is divide. So I underline negative 5. Those are common factors that can cancel. And then if I'm dividing that side by negative 5, I need to divide the other side by negative 5 so it stays balanced. So that's negative 3. Okay, next one. The operator here, again, no operator means times. So we need to underline it, and whatever the x is being multiplied by goes under here. Don't put x underneath there, just the number it's multiplied by, because I still want the x to sit there. And I divide the other side by negative 2. So negative 14 divided by negative 2 is 7. Okay, now the next problem, x divided by 6 equals 8. Now the operation's division, okay? Well, the opposite of division is to multiply. What I like to do when I multiply is just, I'm going to multiply by 6, and that'll cancel this out, and then I multiply by 6 on the other side. So 8 times 6 is 48. If you have to use the multiplication property of equality, don't overthink it. Just whatever number we're dividing by, we're just going to cancel it because I multiplied by 8 and got rid of it, and then I multiply the other side by 8. So 16 times 8 is 128. Okay, next problem, the relationship, the operator with x and -3 is divide, so the opposite is to multiply. So if I multiply this side by -3, it'll just go away, and then I multiply the other side by -3. So -9 times -3 is 27. I don't want you to overthink the multiplication because multiplying is commutative, meaning you can multiply in any order you want. Now the division, I kind of want to see the underline because division's not commutative. If you take like 6 divided by 3, that's totally different answer than if you take 3 divided by 6. So drawing those lines to signal division helps. They tell me what order I'm supposed to divide. But with multiplication, it's commutative because I know it's being divided. So again, we can just eliminate that and times it the other number by it, so it's -220. Okay, then on my next side, I have 3/5 n equals 12. So here's my n. Well, there's no sign between the 3 and the n, so that means multiply. And then the underline with the 5 means divide. So here's how I'm going to attack this. I'm going to do the opposite of divide by 5, which means just get rid of it, and multiply by 5. So I have 3n, 3 times n, equals 60. Now again, remember we said the 3 is multiplied by the n, so the opposite of multiply is to divide. So with division, division's not commutative, so how I get this right is I underline this side, whatever's multiplied by the n goes under here, and those will cancel. Now I divide the other side by 3, and n equals 20. So there's kind of 2 steps to that. Okay, -4 equals 2/3 b. There's no operator between the 2 and the b, so that means times, but we also have this divide by 3. So we want to cancel the division by 3 first. Well, the opposite of division is to multiply, so I'm just going to multiply this -4 times 3. And that gives me -12 equals 2 times b, or 2b. Then the opposite of times is to divide. So when I divide, I want to make sure I do it correctly. Underline that. Whatever's multiplied by the b goes here. And divide the other side. So that gives me -6 equals b, or b equals -6. The order you write in equals doesn't matter. Okay, next problem, 5x. So that means 5 times x and then divided by 8. So we have multiplication and division. Let's take care of the division first. Okay, so I get rid of that and just multiply the other side by 8. Because I'm multiplying this side by 8 when I get rid of it. And I times the other side by 8. So -15 times 8 is -120. So I have 5x equals -120. Now remember, that means 5 times x. So I have to find 5 times what number is -120. So I would divide this side by whatever I'm multiplying the x by, which should be 5. Divide the other side by 5. Okay, so I'm going to take -120 divided by 5, and that's -24. Okay, now the other one. This one's a little bit harder, okay? So 1/4 x, so between the 1 and the x is a times, and then divide by 4. Cancel the division first by multiplying by 4, okay? Now 2 times 4 is going to be 8, okay? Don't worry about the 5. 2 times 4 is 8, and then we just put 8 over 5. So 1 times x equals 8 over 5. Now, dividing anything by 1 is stupid. 1 times this number x is 8/5. So it's the identity property of multiplication, meaning if 1 is your multiplier, you can just get rid of it, okay? Because 1 times x is just x. So x is 8 over 5. You can leave that improper. I'm fine with it, okay?